In a small, close-knit town, former big city cop Angela Hayes arrives in search of a fresh start, hoping to leave a painful past behind. But Cherrywood isn't an easy place to win over, especially when an incident with a young girl causes the community to question Angela's intentions. Facing skepticism and her own doubts, Angela is determined to prove herself, slowly building trust, forming friendships, and finding a new purpose within the town she now calls home. As challenges arise, from a mysterious break-in at a beloved bakery to the threat of a local landmark's closure, Angela steps up, discovering that sometimes the true test of character isn't just about protecting others, but being willing to grow and give back. Will Angela's journey lead her to find a lasting home in Cherrywood? Watch as friendships bloom, fears are faced, and a community learns to welcome one of its own. If you're ready to dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think about Angela's path to belonging. Now, let's begin this journey into the heart of Cherrywood. Cherrywood was a town of gentle hills and winding streets, a place where small creeks trickled under ivy-covered bridges and clusters of houses dotted the landscape like scattered stones along a riverbed. The air was sweet with the fragrance of blooming cherry blossoms, which painted the town in shades of soft pink and white every spring. It was a place where children played freely, where laughter echoed through parks, and where familiarity knitted the community into something close to family. But for Angela Hayes, the town's newest officer, Cherrywood was more like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. A transplant from a major city precinct, she had come here with high hopes of finding peace, of healing from the years spent navigating high-stress situations, where the stakes were always life or death. Here she thought life would be simple. She could breathe again, rebuild herself in a place where the most urgent calls were lost dogs or the occasional traffic mishap. But simplicity, she was beginning to realize, was deceptively complex. Angela strolled through Cherrywood Park on a crisp Saturday afternoon, her eyes scanning the scene before her. Children ran through the grass, their laughter filling the air. Families gathered on blankets. Couples walked hand in hand, and the cherry blossoms above seemed to smile down on the gathering with a sense of quiet approval. Angela's posture was slightly stiff as she walked, her hand never straying far from the radio clipped to her belt. Old habits, she thought. Even here, in the peaceful bubble of Cherrywood, she felt that pang of vigilance, a need to stay alert. As she rounded a corner near the playground, her gaze fell upon a trio of children engaged in an enthusiastic game of tag. They weaved through the equipment, their footsteps light and quick. Leading them was a girl with wild, dark curls that bounced with every step she took. She wore bright blue sneakers, a slight scuff on the toes, and an expression of sheer, uninhibited joy. That girl, Angela thought, couldn't be more than 9. Her laughter, full and unguarded, seemed to echo through the park, lifting the spirits of everyone around. The girl darted between her friends, her movements full of grace and energy, her blue sneakers skidding in the mulch as she expertly dodged her pursuers. Angela's gaze lingered, her curiosity piqued. There was something magnetic about the girl, her presence, her carefree abandon. Angela found herself wondering if she'd ever felt that free, if she'd ever run through the world with such unrestrained joy. The girl's friends chased after her, each step a mix of determination and laughter. "I'm going to catch you, Sasha," called one of the boys, his voice breathless but determined. "Not today, Mason," she replied, her voice bright with challenge as she slipped out of his grasp and darted toward a cluster of monkey bars. She was light on her feet, almost floating as she moved, and for a moment, Angela was completely captivated by the scene. But as she continued watching, something began to shift in Angela's mind. The bright laughter, the joyful chaos of the game. Her instincts, honed by years of constant vigilance, began to tug at her. It was irrational, she knew, but that part of her, the part trained to see threats in every shadow, began to surface. Her hand moved almost unconsciously to her belt, her fingers brushing over the radio. It was just a precaution, she told herself, a remnant of old instincts. But as she watched Sasha dodge her friends, A hint of unease crept into her thoughts. The girl was fast, weaving between the swings and the jungle gym, her laughter ringing out across the park. She was so close to the equipment, so oblivious to everything around her. Angela took a step forward, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the playground. Her mind began to fill with images, memories of cases gone wrong, of moments when joy had turned to tragedy in the blink of an eye. She knew this was Cherrywood, not the city, but the fear, small and insistent, tugged at her all the same. Then, without fully realizing her decision, she stepped forward, her boots crunching against the mulch as she approached the trio of children. Her face was set in an expression of focused intensity, her movements purposeful. The children didn't notice her approach until she was nearly upon them, her shadow stretching across the wood chips like a dark omen. In one swift motion, she reached out and grabbed Sasha's shoulder, bringing the girl's run to an abrupt halt. Sasha stumbled, her laughter fading as she looked up at Angela, her expression a mix of confusion and surprise. For a moment, they locked eyes, and Angela felt a pang of guilt, a realization that her actions had broken something fragile and beautiful. "What do you think you're doing?" Angela's voice was sharper than she intended, her tone carrying the weight of authority rather than the gentle curiosity of a neighbor. Sasha's wide eyes stared back at her, and for a moment, the girl seemed to shrink, the joy in her expression replaced by confusion and something close to fear. Her friends, standing a few feet away, looked on with matching expressions of surprise, their faces flushed from running, but now filled with apprehension. We were just playing tag," Sasha replied, her voice small, hesitant. Angela's grip loosened slightly, but her expression remained stern. "You could have hurt yourself," she said, her voice softening only marginally. "Running like that so close to the equipment, it's dangerous." Sasha's face fell, her shoulders slumping as the weight of Angela's words settled over her. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, glancing over at her friends for reassurance. "Officer, please." Ava, one of the other children, spoke up, her voice trembling. "Sasha didn't do anything wrong. We play here every weekend. It's our favorite game." Mason nodded vigorously, his gaze fixed on Angela with a mix of defiance and fear. "We're careful. We know the rules. Sasha's the fastest, but she's not reckless." Angela's gaze shifted between the three children, her expression softening as she took in their earnest defenses. But beneath her relief lay a nagging feeling of regret, a realization that her overreaction had cast a shadow over their innocent game. She released Sasha's shoulder, stepping back and offering a slight nod, a silent acknowledgement of her mistake. I'm just looking out for your safety," she said, her tone losing some of its harshness. "But I'm sorry if I scared you." The children exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Sasha nodded slightly, though the light in her eyes seemed dimmer than before. Her friends stood beside her, their expressions wary, as if unsure whether to continue their game or find somewhere else to play. Angela felt a heavy weight settle over her as she watched them walk away, their laughter muted, their movements more cautious. She had come here to find peace, to reconnect with the quiet simplicity of life. But in her effort to protect, she had fractured something delicate, something irreplaceable. As she walked away, the laughter of the other children seemed to echo in her mind, a reminder of all she had yet to learn about Cherrywood, about this new life she had chosen. And somewhere within her, a quiet resolve took root, a promise to make things right, to learn from her mistakes, and to truly become part of this community, no matter how long it took. The rest of Angela's weekend passed slowly. She found herself replaying the events at the park, each moment sharp and unforgiving in her mind. The memory of Sasha's wide, confused eyes lingered with her, and the realization of how she had overstepped settled heavily in her chest. By Monday morning, Angela was back at the station, hoping to sink into the routine of her work. She knew she had made a mistake, but she also knew that making amends wouldn't be immediate. She would have to find her place in Cherrywood gradually, step by step, and if she had learned anything from her years as an officer, it was that trust was built slowly, sometimes painfully so. Captain Joyce Winters, the head of the Cherrywood precinct, was waiting for her when she walked in. Captain Winters was a tall woman in her 50s, with a presence that commanded respect. She had a quiet strength about her, the kind that didn't need to shout or boast. Angela had come to admire that strength, though she now feared disappointing the woman who had welcomed her into Cherrywood. "Angela, step into my office when you have a minute," Captain Winters said, her tone neutral but firm. Angela nodded, her stomach tightening as she followed the captain down the hall. She knew this conversation was coming, and part of her was relieved. It was better to address things directly than to let them fester in silence. Once inside, Captain Winters closed the door and gestured for Angela to sit. The office was cozy but unadorned, with a few family photos and a framed commendation for community service on the wall. Winters leaned against her desk, crossing her arms as she regarded Angela with a steady gaze. "I heard about the incident at the park," she began, her voice calm but serious. "You're aware that Sasha Grant is the daughter of Chief Marcus Grant?" Angela's shoulders tensed. She hadn't known until now, though in hindsight, it explained the subtle shift in the other officer's demeanor, the tension she had felt among the town's residents since Saturday. "I didn't realize that at the time, ma'am," Angela replied, her voice measured. "But regardless, I made an error in judgment. I let my guard down, or rather, I kept it too high. I was too cautious." Captain Winters gave a slight nod, her expression thoughtful. "You came here from a city precinct. I understand that in some ways, it's hard to shake old habits. But this town isn't the city, Angela. Cherrywood operates on trust, on knowing people as individuals rather than potential risks." Angela nodded, feeling the weight of the captain's words. It was precisely what she had hoped to find in Cherrywood, and yet she had allowed her instincts to cloud her judgment. Winters studied her for a moment, her gaze softening slightly. "Angela, I don't expect you to change overnight, but I do expect you to try to understand what makes Cherrywood different. Here, people expect their officers to know their families, to know their stories. They need to feel like we're part of the community, not just watching over it." Angela met her gaze, a sense of determination settling within her. "I understand, Captain. I'll work on it." Winters nodded, her expression softening. "Good. Now, I suggest you start by reaching out to the Grants. If you're willing, consider finding a way to make amends on a personal level." Angela felt a pang of unease at the thought, but she knew Winters was right. She had to take responsibility, and that meant facing the people she had wronged, even if it was difficult. "Understood, Captain. I'll find a way to reach out," Angela replied, her voice steady but laced with apprehension. As she left the office, she resolved to set things right with Sasha and her family, even if it took time. Over the next few days, Angela found herself scanning the faces of Cherrywood residents as she went about her duties. Every time she spotted Marcus Grant or his daughter, her pulse quickened slightly, and she would pause, uncertain of how to approach them. She could see Sasha from a distance sometimes, her dark curls bouncing as she walked with friends or hurried down the school steps. The joy Angela had once seen in Sasha's expression seemed diminished, more cautious, and Angela's heart ached each time she noticed it. One late afternoon, Angela found herself at Cherrywood's small local cafe, Millie's Diner, a staple gathering spot for the town. The walls were lined with photographs of past town events, each picture filled with smiling faces of Cherrywood's residents. She took a seat by the window, her gaze drifting over the quiet street outside, her mind restless. "Mind if I join you?" The voice was familiar, yet unexpected, and when Angela looked up, she saw Marcus Grant standing beside her table, a cup of coffee in his hand. Angela nodded, her pulse quickening as he sat down across from her. His expression was unreadable, his presence calm, but carrying an unmistakable weight. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the diner filling the space between them. "I wanted to speak with you, Chief Grant," Angela began, her voice steady. "I owe you and Sasha an apology. I acted out of turn, and I know I made her feel unsafe." Marcus's gaze remained steady, his expression unreadable. "You did," he replied, his tone frank but without accusation. "Sasha's had a difficult time understanding why you treated her that way. To her, you're an officer, someone who's supposed to protect, not intimidate." Angela felt the sting of his words, but she knew he was right. She'd let her own fears overshadow her duty, and the realization weighed heavily on her. "I've been struggling to adjust," she admitted, her voice softer. "My past work required constant vigilance, and it's difficult to let that go." Marcus nodded, his gaze softening slightly. "I understand that, Officer Hayes. We all bring our past experiences with us, and sometimes they cloud our judgment. But in Cherrywood, we don't operate from a place of suspicion. This town is built on trust, on knowing that we're here for each other." Angela felt a surge of respect for Marcus, for his openness, his willingness to address the situation directly. "I want to learn how to be part of Cherrywood," she said earnestly. "I came here hoping for a fresh start, but I've realized that I need to let go of my old instincts if I want to truly belong." Marcus regarded her quietly, his gaze thoughtful. "Sasha is young, and she's resilient, but she's also sensitive. If you're serious about making amends, I think she'd appreciate a gesture, something that shows her you see her not as a potential problem, but as a person." Angela nodded, absorbing his words. She knew she couldn't erase what had happened, but perhaps, if she could show Sasha that she valued her, that she was sorry, she could begin to mend the trust she had broken. "Thank you, Chief Grant," she said, meeting his gaze with sincerity. "I'll find a way to make things right with Sasha. And I want you to know that I'm committed to being part of this community, not just overseeing it." Marcus gave a slight nod, a hint of approval in his expression. "Actions speak louder than words, Officer Hayes. If you're willing to put in the effort, I think you'll find that Cherrywood is a place that can welcome you." Angela felt a sense of relief settle over her, a quiet resolve growing within her. She knew it would take time and effort, but she was determined to prove herself, not just to Marcus, but to the entire town. As Marcus rose to leave, he offered her a nod of encouragement. "Good luck, Angela, and welcome to Cherrywood." The next Saturday, Angela found herself at Cherrywood Community Center, where she had decided to volunteer for an upcoming youth event. The center was a modest building on the outskirts of town, painted in cheerful colors and filled with rooms dedicated to various activities. An art room, a small gym, and a library. The center hosted programs for kids and families year-round, offering a safe and supportive space for young people to learn, play, and connect. When Angela entered, she was greeted by Rachel Porter, the center's coordinator and one of Cherrywood's most beloved residents. Rachel was a warm, energetic woman with salt and pepper hair and a laugh that seemed to light up the room. She was known for her dedication to the town's youth, and she had been running the center for nearly 2 decades. "Angela, welcome," Rachel said, extending her hand with a friendly smile. "Thank you for volunteering. We're always grateful for extra help around here." Angela shook her hand, feeling a surge of gratitude for Rachel's warm welcome. "I'm happy to be here, Rachel. I want to do more for the community, and I thought this would be a good place to start." Rachel nodded, her expression approving. "The kids will appreciate it, and so will we. Today we're setting up for the Fall Arts and Crafts Workshop. It's a favorite among the kids, and it's a good chance for you to meet some of our families." Angela rolled up her sleeves and set to work, helping arrange tables, setting out art supplies, and organizing materials. As families began to arrive, she greeted each one, introducing herself and making small talk. She could feel the lingering hesitance in some of their gazes, a reminder of her actions at the park, but she was determined to let her actions speak for themselves. As the workshop got underway, Angela noticed Sasha and her friends among the group. They were sitting together at a table, focused on creating paper flowers, their laughter and chatter filling the room. Angela felt a pang of nervousness as she approached, but she reminded herself that this was her chance to rebuild trust, to show Sasha that she cared. She knelt beside Sasha's table, offering a gentle smile. "Hi, Sasha. Those flowers look beautiful. You have a real talent for this." Sasha looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and curiosity. After a moment, she nodded, a faint smile appearing. "Thank you, Officer Hayes," she replied, her tone polite but cautious. Angela nodded, encouraged by Sasha's response. "Please, you can call me Angela. I'd love to help if there's anything you need." Sasha's friends exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. Angela stayed for a few moments longer, helping them cut out shapes and sharing in their conversation. Gradually, the children's wariness softened, their laughter returning as they grew comfortable with her presence. As the workshop continued, Angela felt a quiet sense of hope taking root. She knew she had a long way to go, but in the small moments of connection, in Sasha's cautious smile and the children's laughter, she saw the beginnings of a new path, a path toward belonging, trust, and true community. As the weeks passed, Angela found herself increasingly involved with the community center. She'd become a fixture at events, from art workshops to reading circles, and each time, she felt herself being drawn further into the fabric of Cherrywood's daily life. Bit by bit, her role as an outsider faded, replaced by something more profound, though she wasn't quite ready to consider herself a full-fledged part of the town yet. But her growing connection to Cherrywood didn't mean the past had been forgotten. Some parents still regarded her with caution, their glances wary. And, even though Sasha had warmed up slightly, Angela noticed the girl was still tentative around her, never quite meeting her gaze for long. Angela understood. Trust was a delicate thing, and it couldn't be rushed. Still, the distance weighed on her. One rainy afternoon, as Angela was finishing up a volunteer shift at the center, she heard Rachel Porter calling for her from the main office. "Angela, got a moment?" Rachel's voice held that familiar warmth, but there was an edge to it that caught Angela's attention. Angela made her way to the office, where Rachel was sitting with a cup of tea, her gaze thoughtful. She gestured for Angela to sit, then leaned forward, her eyes meeting Angela's with a seriousness that surprised her. "Angela, I wanted to talk to you about something personal," Rachel began, her voice soft but steady. "It's about the community's response to you. You've been wonderful here, and I see the impact you're having on the kids, on everyone really." But she paused, choosing her words carefully. Some of the parents are still hesitant. They remember what happened with Sasha. Angela's stomach tightened, though she kept her expression neutral. "I know," she replied, her voice quiet. "I've been trying to make amends, but I understand that it'll take time." Rachel nodded, her expression sympathetic. "It's not easy to build trust, especially after a difficult start. But I think there's something you could do that might help, something more direct." Angela leaned forward, her attention focused. "What do you suggest?" "Have a conversation with Sasha," Rachel suggested gently. "I know it's a lot to ask, and I wouldn't bring it up if I didn't believe it could make a difference. She's a perceptive girl. She'll know if you're genuine, and if she feels safe, the other kids and their parents will start to come around." Angela's mind raced. The idea of sitting down with Sasha, directly addressing what had happened, admitting her mistake, was daunting. But Rachel was right. It could be the key to healing the rift she'd created. "I'll try," Angela said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "I owe her that much." Rachel gave her a warm smile, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "You're doing good work, Angela. Remember that. And sometimes, the hardest conversations are the ones that matter most." Angela nodded, taking a deep breath. She knew what she had to do. The following Saturday, Angela found herself once again at Cherrywood Park, this time with a specific purpose. She'd heard from one of the parents at the community center that Sasha often came to the park on weekends with her friends, and Angela hoped to find her there. She didn't want to intrude, but instead hoped to catch a moment alone with Sasha, a chance to talk openly. As she walked along the familiar path, Angela spotted Sasha, sitting on a bench under the cherry blossom trees, her friends nowhere in sight. Sasha was engrossed in a book, her head bent over the pages, a quiet concentration in her posture. Angela hesitated, then approached slowly, giving Sasha space to notice her. She stopped a few feet away, her voice soft as she spoke. "Hi, Sasha," she said, offering a gentle smile. Sasha looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and caution. She closed her book, her fingers gripping the cover as she nodded in acknowledgement. "Hi, Officer Hayes." Angela took a deep breath, then sat on the opposite end of the bench, giving Sasha space. She kept her gaze forward, not wanting Sasha to feel pressured. "Please, you can call me Angela," she said quietly. "If that's okay." Sasha nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Okay, Angela." They sat in silence for a moment, the gentle breeze rustling the cherry blossom petals around them. Angela felt the weight of the conversation pressing down on her, but she knew she had to push through it. "Sasha," she began, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I want to apologize to you for what happened at the park that day. I overreacted, and I made you feel unsafe. That was wrong of me." Sasha's eyes flickered with a hint of surprise. She seemed to be studying Angela, her gaze searching, as if trying to gauge the sincerity in her words. "I've been in places where I had to stay on guard all the time," Angela continued, her tone soft. "I thought I was protecting you, but really, I was letting my own fears get in the way. And that wasn't fair to you." Sasha remained silent, but her grip on the book had relaxed. Angela took it as a small sign, a sliver of understanding. "I'm here in Cherrywood because I want to change," Angela said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be someone who's part of this community. And part of that means learning to trust people like you. People who already know how to be part of something good." Sasha's gaze softened, and she seemed to be absorbing Angela's words, letting them settle. "It hurt," Sasha admitted quietly, her voice laced with vulnerability. I thought you didn't like me." Angela's heart ached at the raw honesty in Sasha's words. She turned to face her fully, her expression filled with regret. "I'm so sorry, Sasha. It was never about you. It was about me and my own mistakes. But I want you to know that I see you, and I want to be better. For you, and for Cherrywood." For a moment, Sasha was quiet, her expression thoughtful. Then, slowly, she gave a small nod, a gesture of tentative acceptance. "Okay, Angela," she said, her voice soft but genuine. "I believe you." Angela felt a surge of relief, a quiet sense of hope blossoming within her. It wasn't full forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. And for the first time since she'd arrived in Cherrywood, she felt a sense of true belonging. "Thank you, Sasha," Angela said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Sasha offered a faint smile, her shoulders relaxing. "Everyone makes mistakes. My dad says that what matters is learning from them." Angela nodded, her heart swelling with respect for the young girl sitting beside her. She could see now why Cherrywood valued its young people so deeply, why trust was woven into the very fabric of the town. "I'll keep learning, I promise," Angela replied, a quiet determination in her voice. They sat together for a few more minutes, the silence between them now comfortable. As Sasha returned to her book, Angela felt a warmth settle over her, a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. This was Cherrywood, full of second chances, quiet strength, and the slow, steady work of building trust. The following days brought a noticeable shift in Angela's relationship with the community. Word of her conversation with Sasha had quietly spread, and she could feel a subtle but undeniable change in how people responded to her. Parents at the community center were friendlier, offering her nods of approval and even a few cautious smiles. The children, too, seemed less hesitant, their laughter and chatter filling the room with a warmth that Angela had come to cherish. One evening, she was invited to join the Cherrywood Parents and Neighbors Association at a gathering held in the backyard of Rachel Porter's house. The association was an informal group that discussed community matters, organized events, and supported each other in times of need. Being invited felt like a step forward, a small but meaningful acknowledgement that she was beginning to belong. As she entered Rachel's cozy backyard, strung with fairy lights and decorated with wildflowers from her garden, Angela felt a sense of warmth and acceptance wash over her. The evening air was filled with the rich aroma of grilled food and the soft murmur of laughter. She could see the faces of people she'd come to know, parents, teachers, local shop owners, all gathered to celebrate the simple joy of community. Rachel spotted her and waved her over, a welcoming smile on her face. "Angela, so glad you could make it." Angela returned the smile, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you for inviting me, Rachel. It's wonderful to be here." Rachel handed her a glass of lemonade and introduced her to a few other parents. Angela recognized some of them from the community center, and though she felt a hint of nervousness, she relaxed as they welcomed her into their conversation, their tone friendly and open. As the evening wore on, Angela found herself in deeper conversations, sharing stories of her past, her hopes, and her reasons for coming to Cherrywood. She listened, too, absorbing the stories of others, the struggles, the joys, the moments that had shaped each person's life in this small town. Slowly, she began to understand the depth of Cherrywood's warmth, the quiet resilience that held the community together. At one point, Marcus Grant approached her, holding a glass of water. He gave her a nod, his gaze thoughtful. "I heard about your talk with Sasha," he said, his voice calm but laced with appreciation. "She told me about it that same day." Angela's heart skipped a beat, but she met his gaze steadily. "She's an incredible kid," she replied. "I'm grateful that she was willing to listen." Marcus nodded, his expression softening. "You're making progress, Angela. I think Cherrywood is starting to see you as one of its own." Angela felt a swell of gratitude and relief, a quiet joy that settled deep within her. She had come here searching for peace, and though the journey had been difficult, she was beginning to find what she'd been looking for. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "It means a lot coming from you." They shared a moment of mutual understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the past, and a shared hope for the future. Angela knew there was still work to be done, still bridges to build. But tonight, surrounded by the warmth of Cherrywood, she felt a sense of belonging that she would carry with her, a reminder that even in the quietest places, one could find a home. The fall season began to settle over Cherrywood, transforming the town into a canvas of red, orange, and gold. The air grew crisp, and the scent of wood smoke mingled with the earthy aroma of fallen leaves. For Angela, the town's warmth had started to feel like a balm, healing the rough edges left from her years in the city. Cherrywood had become more than just a place to work. It was starting to feel like home. One Saturday morning, Angela was invited by Rachel to help set up for the annual Harvest Festival, a long-standing tradition that brought the entire community together. The festival was held in Cherrywood's Central Square, where vendors lined the streets with booths selling everything from handmade crafts to baked goods, while families participated in games, hayrides, and pumpkin picking. As Angela arrived at the square, she was greeted by Rachel, who was busy directing volunteers and setting up tables. "Angela, glad you could make it," Rachel called, her eyes crinkling with a smile. Angela smiled back, taking in the bustle of activity. "Thanks for inviting me. It's nice to be part of something like this." Rachel handed her a stack of flyers and a box of decorations. "Would you mind helping set up the kids' craft booth? We're expecting a lot of little ones this year, and I could use an extra hand." Angela took the box eagerly, grateful for the opportunity to contribute. She set to work arranging small pumpkins, markers, paints, and sheets of construction paper, setting the scene for the children's activities. As she worked, she felt a tap on her shoulder and turned to see Sasha standing there, her face lighting up with a shy smile. "Hi, Angela," Sasha said softly, glancing at the craft supplies with interest. "Hi, Sasha," Angela replied, her voice warm. "Are you here to help with the booth?" Sasha nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. "My dad said I could help set things up. I thought it might be fun." Angela's heart lifted, and she gestured to the table. "Great! Let's get started. You can help me arrange the markers, and maybe we can come up with some ideas for crafts." They worked side by side, the silence between them comfortable. Angela noticed how Sasha's confidence seemed to grow with each passing minute, her movements becoming more relaxed as she arranged the craft materials. Occasionally, Sasha would glance at Angela with a tentative smile, and each time, Angela felt a warmth spreading through her. As they were finishing up, a group of children arrived, their faces alight with excitement. Angela watched as Sasha took the lead, guiding them through the craft activities, her voice gentle but firm. Angela marveled at how naturally Sasha interacted with the younger kids, her patience and kindness shining through. At one point, Angela leaned over and whispered, "You're doing a great job, Sasha. The kids really look up to you." Sasha's cheeks flushed with pride, and she gave Angela a grateful nod. "Thank you," she replied softly. Throughout the day, Angela continued to assist with the festival, moving between booths, greeting families, and helping wherever she was needed. She even joined a few games with the kids, their laughter infectious as they played tug-of-war and sack races. By the time evening approached, The square was filled with the glow of fairy lights, casting a warm, golden hue over the gathering. As the sun set, Angela took a moment to stand back and watch the festival unfold. Families mingled, friends shared stories over cups of cider, and children ran through the square with sparklers, their laughter ringing out into the evening air. Angela felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. And as she looked around, she realized she was no longer on the outside looking in. She was part of Cherrywood, in all its vibrant, welcoming beauty. The months following the Harvest Festival were some of the most rewarding Angela had ever experienced. She found herself welcomed into Cherrywood with open arms, each day bringing new connections and deepening friendships. Yet, even as she felt more at home, she knew that her journey toward redemption was far from over. There were still moments when she saw traces of doubt in certain glances, reminders of the mistakes she had made when she first arrived. One such day, as winter crept closer, Angela was patrolling near the Cherrywood Elementary School when she spotted a group of children gathering near the playground fence. Among them was Sasha, her expression animated as she chatted with her friends. But Angela's attention was soon drawn to a boy standing just outside the group, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the ground. Angela recognized him as Daniel Cooper, a quiet, reserved boy who rarely participated in group activities. She'd seen him at the community center now and then, always on the fringes, watching others from a distance. Curious, Angela approached the group, her gaze soft as she observed the children. Sasha noticed her first, her face brightening. "Hi, Angela," she called, waving. Angela smiled, returning the wave. "Hey, everyone. Looks like you're having a good time." One of the kids, Mason, pointed toward the playground. "We're about to play soccer. We just need one more player for the teams." Angela glanced over at Daniel, who stood a few steps behind the group, his hands jammed into his pockets. "Daniel, would you like to join?" she asked gently, her tone inviting. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his friends before shrugging. "I'm not very good at soccer," he mumbled, his gaze fixed on the ground. Sasha stepped forward, her voice kind. "That's okay, Daniel. You don't have to be good to play with us. We just want you to have fun." Angela felt a surge of pride at Sasha's words, a testament to the kindness she'd come to admire in her. She watched as Sasha approached Daniel, her smile encouraging. After a moment, Daniel nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. As the children ran off toward the field, Angela stayed behind, watching as they organized themselves into teams, each one laughing and shouting as they raced across the grass. She saw how Sasha included Daniel, passing the ball to him and cheering him on, her encouragement helping him grow more confident with each play. Angela felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she watched them. In that moment, she understood the true power of Cherrywood, the quiet strength that came from community, from people who saw each other's worth and lifted each other up. And she knew, with certainty, that she had made the right choice in coming here. Winter arrived in full force, blanketing Cherrywood in snow and transforming the town into a winter wonderland. Angela embraced the season with the same enthusiasm she had come to feel for everything Cherrywood offered, participating in holiday events, helping families shovel driveways, and even joining in the town's annual winter parade. But as the holiday season unfolded, Angela also felt the weight of her own past pressing on her. Despite the progress she'd made, she knew she had yet to fully confront the fears that had driven her actions, the vigilance that had clouded her judgment and made her wary of connecting with others. She had learned to trust Cherrywood, but a part of her still struggled to let her guard down completely. One evening, as she was walking home from a holiday gathering, she spotted Marcus Grant standing outside his house, clearing snow from his driveway. The sight of him brought a mix of emotions, but Angela felt a strong urge to speak with him, to finally address the past in a way she hadn't yet dared to. "Need a hand?" she called, her voice light but carrying an undercurrent of sincerity. Marcus looked up, surprise flickering across his face before he nodded. "Sure. 2 shovels are better than 1. Angela grabbed a shovel from the side of the house and joined him, the two of them working in companionable silence for a few moments. The soft crunch of snow filled the air, a peaceful rhythm that seemed to ease the tension between them. After a while, Angela took a deep breath, steeling herself. I never really thanked you, she began, her voice quiet. For giving me a chance? For letting me be part of this community. Marcus paused, leaning on his shovel as he regarded her with a thoughtful expression. It wasn't easy, he admitted. When you first came, I was wary. I've always believed in second chances, but that day with Sasha, it felt personal. Angela nodded, her gaze dropping to the snow. I know, and I take full responsibility for what happened. But I'm grateful that you gave me the opportunity to make things right. Marcus studied her for a moment, his expression softening. Angela, you've proven yourself. You've shown that you're willing to put in the work, to listen, to learn. That matters to me, and it matters to the town. Angela felt a surge of relief and gratitude, a warmth that spread through her even in the chilly night air. Thank you, Marcus. I won't take it for granted. He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Cherrywood's a forgiving place. We don't expect perfection, just a willingness to try. They continued shoveling, their breaths forming soft clouds in the cold air. And as they worked side by side, Angela felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a quiet acceptance settling over her. She knew that her past mistakes would always be a part of her, but here in Cherrywood, she had found a place that allowed her to grow beyond them. As January settled over Cherrywood, bringing crisp air and icy mornings, Angela felt herself drawn closer than ever to the heart of the town. The holidays had come and gone, leaving memories of cozy gatherings and laughter, but also a quieter season that Cherrywood embraced with equal enthusiasm. Families took up ice skating on the frozen pond, children made snow forts in the park, and neighbors gathered for hot cocoa and stories by the fire. Angela found herself becoming a familiar face at these gatherings, often invited to join families for weekend dinners or sledding afternoons. She cherished these invitations and accepted them whenever possible, each gathering a small yet meaningful step in her journey toward true belonging. One cold evening, she received an unexpected invitation from Marcus and Sasha Grant. They'd invited her to their home for dinner, something Angela hadn't anticipated but welcomed with genuine warmth. She sensed that their invitation was Marcus's way of showing her that, in his eyes, she had finally become part of Cherrywood. As Angela arrived at their home, she noticed Sasha's handmade snowflakes decorating the windows, each one uniquely cut and glittered. When she knocked on the door, Sasha was the first to answer, her face lighting up with excitement. Angela, come in. Dad made chili, and it's really good, she said, her voice bright and welcoming. Angela grinned, feeling the warmth of the house immediately. Thank you, Sasha. I've been looking forward to this. They led her into the cozy kitchen, where Marcus was stirring a large pot on the stove. The room was filled with the comforting aroma of spices and simmering vegetables, the air thick with the warmth of a home filled with love and laughter. Marcus turned, offering her a welcoming smile. Angela, glad you could make it, he said, his tone casual but sincere. It's my pleasure, Marcus, Angela replied, taking a seat at the kitchen island. As they settled down for dinner, the conversation flowed naturally, filled with stories of Cherrywood, shared laughter, and occasional glances of understanding. Sasha animatedly described her recent art projects at school, while Marcus shared anecdotes from his time in Cherrywood's police department. Over the course of the evening, Angela felt herself opening up as well, sharing stories from her past, her struggles, and the moments that had shaped her. She spoke about her decision to leave the city, her need for a fresh start, and the journey she'd embarked upon since coming to Cherrywood. Sasha listened intently, her gaze softening as she heard Angela's words. It was clear that the young girl had grown to care for Angela in ways that went beyond their initial misunderstandings. She looked at Angela not only as an officer, but as a friend, someone who had come to mean something special to both her and her father. As the evening drew to a close, Marcus walked Angela to the door, his expression thoughtful. Thank you for coming, Angela. It means a lot to Sasha, and to me, he said quietly. Angela felt a surge of gratitude, a sense of belonging that went deeper than words. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Cherrywood has become my home, and you and Sasha have been a big part of that. They exchanged a brief but meaningful nod, a silent acknowledgement of their journey from distrust to understanding. And as Angela left, she felt a warmth that stayed with her, even as the cold winter air wrapped around her. The following weeks brought new challenges for Angela as she settled into her role in Cherrywood. The quiet town life had a rhythm of its own, one that Angela had come to respect, yet she also knew that even small towns faced their own struggles. Cherrywood was no different. One morning, as Angela was finishing a patrol near the town square, she spotted an elderly woman standing at the entrance of her bakery, her face creased with worry. Mrs. Evelyn Roberts, one of Cherrywood's most beloved residents, had run the bakery for decades, her treats a staple of the community. Angela approached her, concern in her voice. "Mrs. Roberts, is everything okay?" The elderly woman looked up, her expression relieved when she recognized Angela. "Oh, Angela, I'm so glad you're here. Someone broke into the bakery last night. I noticed some of my supplies are missing, and there were footprints by the back door." Angela's chest tightened. Cherrywood rarely experienced incidents like this, and the thought of Mrs. Roberts, a woman known for her generosity and kindness, being targeted unsettled her. "I'll take a look, Mrs. Roberts. Don't worry, we'll get to the bottom of this." She followed Mrs. Roberts to the back of the bakery, where they found evidence of forced entry, a broken lock, scattered flour, and small footprints leading away from the door. Angela studied the scene carefully, her instincts alert. "Have you noticed anyone unusual around here lately?" she asked gently, not wanting to alarm her. Mrs. Roberts shook her head, her face pained. "No, but Cherrywood's always been so safe. I can't imagine anyone here doing this." Angela nodded, understanding the shock that Mrs. Roberts felt. "I'll look into it. In the meantime, I'd suggest getting a new lock installed. And if you notice anything else, let me know." She spent the rest of the day investigating the incident, speaking with neighbors and checking other local businesses for any signs of similar activity. But as the day went on, it became clear that the break-in wasn't part of any larger pattern. It seemed to be an isolated incident, leaving Angela to wonder if it might have been a one-time act of desperation. Later that afternoon, as she walked past Cherrywood Park, she noticed a boy she hadn't seen before sitting alone on a bench, his shoulders hunched and his gaze downcast. His clothes were worn, his face pale, and there was a sense of solitude about him that tugged at Angela's heart. Angela approached him slowly, her voice gentle. "Hey there, mind if you sit?" The boy looked up, startled but nodded. Angela took a seat beside him, waiting a moment before speaking again. "My name's Angela. I'm an officer here in Cherrywood. Are you new in town?" The boy nodded again, his voice barely a whisper. "My name's Jake. My mom and I just moved here. Things have been rough." Angela's heart softened. She could see the uncertainty in his expression, the way he seemed to be carrying a burden far heavier than any child should bear. "I'm sorry to hear that, Jake. Cherrywood's a friendly place, though. I think you'll find that people here are happy to lend a hand." Jake gave a slight shrug, his gaze flickering to the ground. "It's just we don't have much right now. My mom's trying to find work, but it's hard." Angela sensed the connection between Jake's situation and the bakery break-in. She decided to tread carefully, not wanting to overwhelm him. "You know, there are people here who care. Mrs. Roberts at the bakery, for instance. She's been part of Cherrywood for a long time, and she's always there for folks who need help." Jake's expression shifted, a hint of guilt flashing across his face. Angela waited, giving him space to share if he chose to. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice low. "I didn't want to take anything. I thought if I could bring home something to eat, maybe my mom wouldn't have to worry as much." Angela's heart ached at his words. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the weight of worry that no child should carry. Reaching out gently, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Jake, I know things are tough, but you don't have to face this alone. There are people here who can help." Jake looked up, his gaze searching hers, as if trying to decide whether to trust her. "How about this?" Angela continued, her voice kind but firm. "I'll talk to Mrs. Roberts. She's a kind woman, and I think she'd understand if you wanted to apologize. And if you and your mom ever need anything, you can come to me. I'm here to help." A faint glimmer of hope flickered in Jake's eyes, and he nodded slowly. Thank you, Angela. I'll go talk to her. As Angela watched him walk away, she felt a sense of purpose settle over her, a reminder of why she had come to Cherrywood. It wasn't just about finding peace for herself. It was about becoming part of something bigger, about giving back to a town that had shown her what it meant to truly belong. That evening, Angela paid a visit to Mrs. Roberts at the bakery, explaining Jake's situation and his desire to apologize. Mrs. Roberts listened with a thoughtful expression, her eyes softening as Angela shared the boy's story. "Oh, poor thing," she murmured. "If he needs food, he doesn't need to steal it. I'd be more than happy to set aside a loaf or two for him and his mother. That's what neighbors are for." Angela felt a swell of gratitude, a deep appreciation for the generosity that defined Cherrywood. "Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. I'll make sure Jake knows he has people looking out for him." The next day, Jake returned to the bakery, accompanied by Angela. He was nervous, fidgeting as he approached Mrs. Roberts, but she greeted him with a warm smile and open arms. "It's all right, Jake," she said gently. "I know things can be difficult, and I want you to know that you're welcome here anytime. If you and your mother ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Jake's face softened, and he managed a shy smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. I'm really sorry." As they left the bakery, Angela walked with Jake, a sense of quiet pride settling over her. She'd seen firsthand the power of empathy and kindness, the way a simple act of understanding could transform lives. Cherrywood had shown her that, and in turn, she had helped pass that kindness on to someone else. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. And as she looked down at Jake, she knew that Cherrywood was more than just a town. It was a family, one she was finally truly part of. As winter continued, Angela found herself balancing her duties as an officer with her involvement in the community. She was increasingly drawn into Cherrywood's everyday life, attending town meetings, helping with school events, and finding herself greeted with genuine smiles and waves from neighbors. But even with her growing sense of belonging, she remained aware that her journey of acceptance wasn't yet complete. There were still layers of herself she hadn't fully faced, fears she hadn't let go of. One afternoon, Angela was at the station wrapping up paperwork when Captain Joyce Winters called her into the office. The captain, always sharp-eyed and thoughtful, gestured for Angela to sit down, her expression more serious than usual. "We've got a situation, Angela," Captain Winters began, her voice steady but carrying an edge of concern. "The town council is debating cuts to the community center's funding. If they move forward, the center will lose its after-school programs and could even face closure." Angela felt a pang in her chest. She knew how much the community center meant to Cherrywood. It wasn't just a place to play and learn, but a haven for kids like Sasha, Daniel, and Jake, a place where families could come together. She also knew what the loss would mean for Rachel Porter, whose life had been dedicated to creating a safe and welcoming space for every child in town. "Do they realize how much the center means to this community?" Angela asked, her voice barely concealing her frustration. Captain Winters nodded, her expression sympathetic. "They're aware, but budgets are tight this year. They're looking for ways to save, and unfortunately, the community center is seen as non-essential by some." Angela clenched her fists, determined to act. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Captain Winters gave a thoughtful nod. "Rachel and a few other townsfolk are organizing a town hall meeting next week. They're going to make the case for keeping the center open, but it'll be an uphill battle. If you're willing, I think your voice could make a difference." Angela didn't hesitate. "It'd be a day. Cherrywood needs that center. I know I've only been here a short time, but I've seen firsthand the impact it has." The captain offered her a small, approving smile. "I thought you'd say that. Rachel will be glad to know she has you in her corner." As Angela left the office, her mind raced with ideas. She knew that this was more than just a cause. It was a chance for her to contribute to Cherrywood in a meaningful way, to stand up for a place that had given her so much. The night of the town hall meeting arrived quickly, and Angela found herself in Cherrywood's main gathering hall, surrounded by familiar faces. Residents had come out in droves, filling every seat and lining the back walls. Rachel Porter stood at the front of the room, her expression determined but anxious as she reviewed her notes. Angela could see the worry etched into her features, the quiet fear of losing something she held dear. Angela took a seat near the front, nodding encouragingly at Rachel, who gave her a grateful smile. As the meeting began, the mayor and town council members addressed the crowd, outlining the town's budget concerns and the need for cutbacks. When they finally reached the issue of the community center, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Angela could feel the tension as townsfolk murmured among themselves, their faces a mixture of worry and anger. Rachel was the first to speak, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The Cherrywood Community Center is more than a building. It's a sanctuary for our children, a place where families can gather and build memories. Without it, our community loses a piece of itself. One by one, residents took turns sharing their thoughts. Parents spoke of the center's importance to their children's development. Young adults recounted the positive impact it had on them as kids, and teachers described how the after-school programs helped students stay engaged. Angela listened intently, feeling her own resolve strengthening with every word. Finally, it was her turn to speak. She stood up, her heart pounding slightly as she faced the council and the gathered crowd. "My name is Angela Hayes," she began, her voice steady but laced with conviction. "I've only been in Cherrywood for a short time, but I've seen the impact of the community center firsthand. It's a place where children feel safe, where they learn and grow, where families connect. It's a place that gives Cherrywood its heart." She paused, meeting the gaze of each council member in turn. "When I first came here, I was looking for a fresh start. I'd come from a place where community often felt like an abstract idea. But here in Cherrywood, community is a living, breathing thing. It's the reason I'm able to call this place home, and the community center is a core part of that." Angela could feel the room's attention fixed on her, and she continued, her voice unwavering. "Cutting funding to the center may save money, but it will cost Cherrywood far more than that. It will cost us a place where children like Jake, Sasha, and so many others can find support and belonging." She took a breath, letting her words sink in. "I know that budgeting is a challenge, and I respect the work the council does. But I urge you, please reconsider. Find another way. The people of Cherrywood deserve a space where they can feel safe and connected." When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Angela looked over at Rachel, who was beaming with gratitude. The other parents gave her nods of approval, and even some of the council members seemed moved, exchanging thoughtful glances. The meeting continued with discussions of alternative funding options, and by the end of the night, the council agreed to table the decision, promising to explore other ways to address the budget without cutting the center's funding. As Angela left, she felt a sense of accomplishment and pride, knowing she had contributed to a cause that mattered to her newfound home. Following the town hall, Angela found herself more deeply woven into Cherrywood's community than ever before. The residents treated her not just as an officer, but as a friend, someone who had earned their trust and respect. And yet, she felt that her work was far from done. The community center became a hub of activity as spring approached, its doors open to families eager to enjoy Cherrywood's changing season. Angela often volunteered to help with after-school activities, using her time at the center to build stronger relationships with the kids and their families. She'd come to know them well, each child's unique personality, their dreams, their struggles. One afternoon, as she was tidying up after an art class, Angela noticed Jake lingering near the door. His usual reserved demeanor seemed even quieter, and Angela could see a hint of worry in his eyes. "Hey, Jake," she said, offering him a warm smile. "How was class today?" Jake hesitated, glancing down at the floor. "It was okay," he mumbled, "but my mom's been really stressed. She works so much, and I don't want her to worry about me." Angela felt a pang of empathy, understanding the weight that Jake carried. She knew he was only 10, but he bore a responsibility beyond his years, a quiet resilience that made her heart ache. "You know, Jake," she said gently, kneeling down to his level, "it's okay to lean on others. It's not a burden. You're part of this community, and we're here to help each other." Jake looked up, his eyes searching hers. Do you think I'll ever be strong enough to help her? Like, really help her?" Angela felt a lump form in her throat, moved by his sincerity. "Jake, you're already strong. You're kind, thoughtful, and you care deeply about the people you love. Those are the qualities of someone who's strong on the inside. And someday, you'll have the chance to help in big ways. But for now, it's okay to let people take care of you too. Jake seemed to take her words to heart, a faint smile appearing on his face. Thanks, Angela. I'm glad you're here. As he walked away, Angela felt a surge of gratitude. She was grateful not only for the chance to guide him, but also for the role Cherrywood had given her. She'd come to realize that her work wasn't just about enforcing the law. It was about being a protector, a mentor, a friend. It was about making sure that children like Jake had a place to belong. As spring blossomed over Cherrywood, Angela found herself facing one final challenge that would test her sense of duty and connection to the community. Word had spread of a developer's interest in building a large commercial complex on the outskirts of town, near Cherrywood's cherished nature preserve. The plan included clearing part of the preserve to make way for parking lots and new infrastructure, and the town was divided. Some residents welcomed the idea of increased commerce, but many others, including Angela, were concerned about the impact on Cherrywood's character and environment. The nature preserve was a beloved spot, a sanctuary for families, hikers, and young explorers alike. Angela joined the residents who opposed the development, helping them organize a peaceful demonstration and providing guidance on their rights to petition and speak out. She worked closely with Marcus and Rachel, spending evenings strategizing and planning ways to communicate the town's concerns to the developers. The day of the demonstration arrived, and Angela joined a group of residents, signs in hand, as they gathered near the preserve's entrance. The air was filled with a sense of determination and unity, a shared love for Cherrywood's quiet beauty. Angela felt a deep pride as she stood beside her friends and neighbors, knowing that she was fighting for something that mattered to all of them. Her speech that day was short but powerful, capturing the town's need to protect its natural spaces and preserve the heart of what made Cherrywood special. As she spoke, she saw familiar faces in the crowd: Sasha, Jake, Marcus, Rachel, all watching her with a mix of gratitude and respect. In the weeks that followed, the developers agreed to reconsider their plans, pledging to work with the community to find a solution that would honor Cherrywood's needs. It was a hard-won victory, and one that underscored Angela's place in the town. For the first time, she felt fully at peace. Cherrywood had become more than just a home. It was a part of her, woven into her very identity. As summer dawned on Cherrywood, the town felt alive with renewed energy and warmth. The trees were lush with green leaves, gardens were in full bloom, and the townsfolk moved with a lightness that only the season's sunshine could bring. For Angela, each morning felt like a gift, a reminder of how far she had come since arriving in Cherrywood. One bright Saturday morning, Angela was invited to the town's annual summer picnic, a beloved tradition held in the heart of Cherrywood Park. Families gathered with picnic baskets and blankets, filling the grassy areas with laughter, music, and the smell of fresh food. Children ran barefoot across the open fields, their joyful shouts echoing under the clear blue sky. Angela arrived early to help set up, her heart filled with excitement. As she arranged tables and hung decorations, she felt a sense of joy and anticipation that she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about the picnic itself. It was about the sense of belonging she now felt, a belonging that was hard-won and deeply cherished. As the picnic began, Angela wandered among the families, greeting everyone with a warmth that felt as natural as breathing. She saw Sasha playing with her friends near the playground, Jake helping his mother set up their picnic spot, and Rachel Porter, laughing and chatting with a group of parents. Just as she was about to join a group near the food tables, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she found Marcus Grant standing there, a small smile on his face. "Angela," he said, his voice friendly, "you seem to be the most popular person here today." Angela laughed, feeling a flush of happiness. "I think that's thanks to all of you, Marcus. Cherrywood's been more than I ever could have hoped for." Marcus nodded, his gaze warm. "We're glad to have you here. You've done a lot for this town. More than just your job. You've become part of Cherrywood." His words struck a chord deep within her, a gentle reminder of the journey she'd taken to get to this point. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. It means a lot to hear that. As the afternoon wore on, Angela joined in on the games, helping referee sack races, playing tug-of-war, and even participating in the pie-eating contest, much to the laughter of the kids who cheered her on. With each laugh, each smile, she felt herself settling further into her place in Cherrywood, the connection she'd made woven into the fabric of who she was. Later that evening, as the sun began to set over Cherrywood Park, the townsfolk gathered around a bonfire to share stories, sing, and reflect on the day. Angela sat on a log near the fire, her face lit by the warm glow, surrounded by friends who had become like family to her. Rachel Porter, always the town storyteller, began to recount a tale about Cherrywood's early days, the history of the park, and how the annual summer picnic had become a tradition. As Rachel spoke, the crowd listened in rapt attention, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Angela felt a tap on her arm and turned to see Sasha, who had slipped away from her friends to sit beside her. "Hey, Angela," Sasha said, her voice soft. "Can I tell you something?" Angela smiled, her gaze gentle. "Of course, Sasha. You can tell me anything." Sasha looked down, a hint of shyness in her expression. "I'm glad you're here. When you first came, I didn't understand, but now I'm really happy you're part of Cherrywood." Angela felt her heart swell, and she placed a gentle hand on Sasha's shoulder. "Thank you, Sasha. That means the world to me. I'm grateful to know you, to be here with all of you." Sasha's face brightened with a smile, and she leaned against Angela, their bond unspoken yet deeply felt. The two of them sat together, watching the fire, sharing a moment of peace that felt timeless. As the evening wore on, Angela joined in the songs and stories, her voice mingling with the laughter and joy of the crowd. She felt a contentment she hadn't known before, a sense of wholeness that came from being fully embraced by the people around her. The next morning, as Angela strolled through the quiet streets of Cherrywood, she reflected on her journey, the steps that had brought her to this place of peace and purpose. Her time in Cherrywood had changed her profoundly. It had given her the space to heal, to connect, and to grow into the person she had always hoped to be. She wandered to Cherrywood Park, now quiet and empty after the festivities. Sitting on one of the benches, she took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves. This place, with its open fields and gentle hills, had become a sanctuary, a place where she could be fully herself, without fear or hesitation. As she sat there, she thought back to the first day she'd arrived, the cautious glances, the feeling of being an outsider. And now, here she was, surrounded by friends who had come to trust her, children who looked up to her, and neighbors who greeted her with open hearts. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Rachel Porter, who smiled and took a seat beside her. "Good morning, Angela," Rachel said, her voice warm and cheerful. "I thought I'd find you here, enjoying the peace and quiet." Angela nodded, a soft smile on her face. "I was just thinking about how much this place means to me now. It's hard to believe there was a time when I didn't feel like I belonged." Rachel reached over, placing a gentle hand on Angela's arm. "You've earned your place here, Angela. Cherrywood isn't just a town, it's a family. And you're part of that family now." Angela felt a surge of gratitude, a quiet but powerful joy that filled her chest. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything. I don't think I could have made this journey without your support and the support of everyone in Cherrywood." Rachel smiled, her gaze filled with pride. "That's what we're here for, Angela. We all have our own journeys, and sometimes we need a little help along the way." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the morning light spread across the park. Angela knew that this was only the beginning of her life in Cherrywood, that there would be more days filled with laughter, challenges, and love. But she felt ready for whatever the future held, knowing she was surrounded by people who cared for her. And as she looked around at the park, at the familiar sights and sounds that had become part of her, Angela knew, with absolute certainty, that she was finally home. Years later, Angela stood at the edge of Cherrywood Park, watching a group of children run across the field, their laughter filling the air. She recognized some of them as the children of her old friends, their faces familiar, their spirits as bright as those who had come before them. Beside her stood Marcus, Rachel, and Sasha, now a young adult with dreams of her own. The four of them watched the scene unfold, each lost in their own memories of the years they had shared. Sasha turned to Angela, her gaze filled with warmth. "Thank you for everything, Angela. You've taught me so much about kindness, courage, and community." Angela smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You taught me just as much, Sasha. Cherrywood gave me a place to belong, and you all gave me a purpose." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Angela took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace that only Cherrywood could bring. She had found her place, her family, her home, and in that moment, she knew she would carry Cherrywood's spirit with her always. A quiet strength, a steady love, and an enduring belief in the power of community. If you enjoyed Angela's journey of growth, redemption, and community in Cherrywood, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here, you'll find more inspiring stories that capture the power of kindness, second chances, and belonging. Join us for the next adventure and be a part of this journey toward hope and connection.